Hello, welcome everyone, as we're just joining. Thank you so much to everyone for signing up. We were on this very sunny day to join us online for a webinar. We were really pleased to have so many people sign up and be interested today. So a really warm welcome from me. My name's Isabel Rice. I lead on the food poverty work at Sustain. And I'm joined today by some fantastic speakers, really excited to share with you. So you won't hear too much from me today.
Yes.
We are really lucky to have this packed agenda, so I'm going to get started so that we get to hear from all our speakers and have some time for you to ask questions at the end if you'd like to. So I'll just start with a quick bit of housekeeping. We are going to record the session today and that will be shared after. So, if you need to drop off or anything like that, that will be shared after in full. We will also share the slides and any key resources or links or information that comes through from the presentations or from yourselves sharing in the chat today. So you'll probably notice we're running today as a webinar because we've been so lucky to have lots of people sign up and be interested. So that means if you're not a speaker today, you can't share your screen or your microphone or your video. So we won't be able to see or hear you, unfortunately, but please do feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, say hello, share information, research, links, reports, if you'd like to. I'm sure that'd be very welcome for others here. And also you should notice at the bottom of the screen, there's a Q&A function. If you can't see it, there's 3 dots that says more. And in there's a Q&A box. Now we are going to have some time after the speakers today to ask questions. So as we go through, feel free to put any questions in there that you'd like to ask for our speakers today. There is also a CC closed captions option at the bottom. So if you'd like to have subtitles come up on the screen, if you press that button, those are enabled and that should come up for you. Just quickly wanted to remind everyone that this is a diverse and inclusive community. Hopefully we're going to hear a little bit more about who's in the room shortly. And we really like everyone to feel welcome and safe in this space. So please do bear that in mind and we won't tolerate any kind of discrimination. Please be considerate. We have a range of points of view in the room and any offensive language or cultural outdated references should be avoided. So with that in mind, we look forward to having a respectful and enjoyable and really interesting event today. Some of you might have attended our webinar or watched the recording from the webinar that we held in April. So this is following on from that. That webinar was looking at the Crisis and Resilience Fund new guidance as it was then and understanding what opportunities for the charitable food sector may come out of this. If you haven't seen that and you're interested, the recording is up on our website and I'll share that link. And it also followed on from a set of frequently asked questions that we developed for the charitable food sector. So really this is following on from that session where we were looking at the guidance and how the charitable food sector can adapt and what opportunities are. And one of those really key areas is around developing wraparound advice and support services alongside charitable food providers. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today. I know a real topic of interest for a lot of places. And that these could potentially support people who are experiencing crisis and as well as helping to prevent crisis and build up financial resilience. So really well aligned with this new Crisis and Resilience Fund guidance. So what I'm now going to quickly do, hopefully to get us just started, is to share a quick Menti to find out a little bit more about who's in the room. So if you either go to www.menti.com and enter this code in, or you quickly get your smartphone and scan that QR code that's on the screen now, that should take you through to our Menti page. So I can see lots of people are joining. That's great. So I'll just read out the code in case you need it. It's 54596181. Great. We've got loads of people joining on the Menti. That's great. So I'll just give it a few more seconds. Right. So I'm just going to hop through now on to the next page that's going to give us our question. So just to start us off, could you let us know what type of organisation are you joining us from? So we've got options there: local authority, food partnership or a food network, a frontline provider, that could be, or a charitable food provider, wraparound support, a combination, academic or somewhere else. Okay, I can see we've got lots of local authorities, food partnerships, frontline providers in the room, which is great. That's what we were expecting, so that's good news for us, and hopefully useful for our speakers just to know who's here in the room with us today. Some other, I always think, oh, maybe I should have expanded. It would be good to know who that is, but do feel free to introduce yourself in the chat and where you're from. And then I'll just skip on to the next question then, which is if you think about the wraparound support offer in your area, so that could be for your own frontline delivery, or for your local authority, it could be in your across the area. How established do you think your wraparound support is? So if there's no offer, if you're in the early stages of developing one, if you've got quite an established offer, but there's more that you'd like to include, or if you feel it's very well established and you've kind of got everything in place. And apologies, my cat's joining. So if you hear a little meow in the background, he's also interested in wraparound support. Okay, a bit of a mix there. We've got lots that feel, most people feeling that it's quite established, but they would like to develop more. Some at the early stages, and then a few with none or very well established. Okay. I'll move the cat and go back to slide share. And now I'm going to hand over to colleagues Sabine Goodwin from the Independent Food Aid Network and Matt Earnshaw from the Financial Inclusion Centre, who are going to give us a little bit more context about the fund. So if you'd like to come in,
yeah,
Sabine and Matt.
Thank you, Isabel. It's great to be with you all this morning. As some of you will know, IFAN Independent Food Aid Network is a network of independent food aid providers working across the UK. Our goal is to end the need for charitable food aid, and representatives of two IFAN member organisations will be speaking today. IFAN has been calling for a cash-first or income-focused approach to food insecurity for many years. As part of the Crisis Support Working Group, IFAN has campaigned alongside Sustain and others for permanent crisis support in England. Last year, together with over 40 other third-party organisations, including Sustain again, IFAN was involved with the DWP's co-design of the CRF guidance alongside a cohort of local authorities. And I'm delighted to be speaking today alongside Matt Earnshaw of the Financial Inclusion Centre. Matt is an expert in developing financial inclusion policy and designing, delivering and evaluating effective support programmes to tackle poverty. Next slide, please, Isabel. In the CRF guidance, local authorities have been encouraged to think creatively about new approaches to building sustainable food landscapes, which draw on established best practice and support people to transition away from crisis support to building their financial resilience. Through the CRF, local authorities can support charitable food aid providers, as well as alliances and food partnerships when running resilient services. I'm going to hand over to Matt now, who will be able to speak about the CRF's outcomes, its principles, and how resilient services are described and measured in the guidance.
Thank you. Thank you, Sabine. Yes, hi, morning, everyone. Nice to see everybody. And as Sabine was saying, the Financial Inclusion Centre, we work a lot with local authorities and housing associations and other charitable organisations to really tackle social and financial exclusion and build resilient communities. And I've just been asked today really just to provide a bit of an overview. Again, Isabel said that the previous session in April, where you were beginning to look at some of the CRF guidance, just go through that in a little bit more detail. I'm sure many of you have already seen it, but for those who haven't, hopefully this will be useful. Bit of an aid memoir as well if you have seen it. And so really is as I'm sure many of you will know, the real aim of the CRF is to move beyond that crisis support, and really look at how through that scheme you can begin to help people to really build their financial resilience and essentially leave them better able to cope with potential future financial shocks, avoid that cycle of repeated crisis. And then the third point, really about strengthening the local support system. So there's much greater coordination and that joined up service provision in those local areas. And it was interesting to see those stats just off the survey in terms of the majority of you sort of saying, well, we have some established sort of wraparound type support, but we want more of it. So if you could just move me on, please. And so so that's moved towards resilience while still having that effective sort of crisis support in place, strengthening the local infrastructure, if you like, to be able to support people. And it's underpinned, or the guidance sets out rather, 5 key principles to sort of guide the delivery of the CRF. Support's got to be trauma informed, and you will know much better than me the significant stress that people can be dealing with when they're facing financial and money related problems. Support needs to be person centered and tailored. So, you know, there is no one size fits all solution. Holistic, I think, is probably the most important thing for me, really, and that greater recognition that money and financial problems they don't happen in isolation. And, you know, they're often linked to other things, could be housing issues, employment, redundancy, for example, health problems, family issues, relationship breakdown. And so really the CRF is about taking that more holistic approach and not just looking at the money problems element of it in isolation. It's got to be evidence-based, need-based, so actually understanding how to what is needed in the local area is critically important. And the other really important principle, I think, is that no wrong door. So wherever somebody turns for support, they are connected into that broader support network. And again, it's just re-emphasizing that need for that greater coordination and joined up service provision. Next slide, please. And again, like with all sort of new guidance and what have you, there's always terminology to kind of get your head around. Broadly speaking, when they're talking about the CRF resilient services, there's those 4 broad areas of support. And I think a lot of the organisations, a lot of you sat around today will already be delivering elements of this. You might be calling it something different. So I just thought it would be useful just to quickly whiz through what some of those terms really mean. So budget maximisation, really a big element of support in terms of looking at how can you help people to reduce essential household costs. So that could be through the delivery of things like energy advice, helping people access social tariffs for water, digital inclusion and helping people reduce the costs through being able to access services and what have you online. So it's really about affordable and appropriate sort of service provision that helps to minimise that household expense. Income maximisation is about bringing the money into the household. So is everybody getting the benefits they're entitled to? Are there eligible grants that are available? But also that broader employment support and training advice to help people get back into work or move on in work. And is all aimed at bringing more money in whilst you're helping the households to reduce their costs. Income smoothing, which is a great term, but essentially, I think even if a household has sufficient income coming in, the timing of how that income comes in, and also the fact that, you know, financial shocks are always just around the corner. Washing machine breaks down, car breaks down, something happens. income is never really just smooth, and it's a bit more like a wave or a roller coaster. So helping people to be able to smooth that out at times of need is really important, and that's, you'll see access to affordable credit, for example, being a really key part of the CRF. Also, things like making sure people have got access to insurance and they can budget effectively. But it's really about giving people the opportunity to access appropriate support at a time of need. That means they don't have to go towards using higher cost lenders, loan sharks, or something like that. And then finally, financial capability, just that confidence and skills and knowledge to help people manage their finances. And I think both in the short term, but also in terms of longer term planning. And final slide, I think from me, thank you, is just to say, and the other key thing really is a much stronger move away from just looking at funding activities towards delivering outcomes. And local authorities, the local authority partners who are sat around with us today, will know the need to be able to show and demonstrate the impact of the CRF proposals they're delivering. And then it just sort of shows there the outcomes on the right hand side that government are going to be expecting to see come out of delivery of the CRF. So that's pretty much a whistle stop tour, I think, of sort of CRF and the latest guidance and what it means. And I'll just pass you back to Sabine to finish off.
Next, thanks, Isabel. Is it okay if I go on for a couple more minutes?
Just one more minute.
Yeah, okay. We know that the development of networks of support with no wrong doors is key to both helping people build financial resilience and to ensuring people avoid falling into crisis in the first place. And it's important to highlight the work of food banks gradually transforming into community hubs. These hubs incorporate a range of wraparound services within long-established frameworks of trust and support, as Matt alluded to. The CRF has the capacity to help food aid providers to make and to continue to make these transformations. The community hubs we're talking about provide the very resilient services referenced in the guidance. It's possible to imagine a pathway to ending the need for charitable food aid in a society where people access community food venues because they want to, not because they have to, due to lack of income. Community hubs where holistic support is the number one concern. It's possible to see how people can access the help they need without necessarily needing the food aid as the connector. Next slide, Isabel, really quickly, if that's okay. And finally, I wanted to mention that IFAN and Sustain have worked alongside the LGA, the DWP CRF team, Expert Link, and other colleagues to form a new CRF alliance. And I'll put the details into the chat. We set up a working group to help facilitate the sharing of best practice. And work is already underway through an evaluation task and finish group to help with efforts to monitor the success of CRF schemes. I'm going to hand back to you now, Isabel. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Sabine and Matt. That's a really useful bit of context. So we're now going to hear from some frontline providers who are going to share some practical guidance and tips on how they've developed wraparound support within their charitable food projects and share some of their experience around doing that. So firstly, really pleased to welcome Ellie Coteau from the Welcome Centre.
Hello everyone, thank you for the introduction, Isabel. So the Welcome Centre, we're an independent charity. We're based in Huddersfield in West Yorkshire, and we cover a mixed rural and urban area, just to give you a little background on how we work. You'll see from our logo there, our official tagline is Food Bank and More. But what I'm meant to give you is a bit of a whistle-stop journey of how we've gone from being just a food bank to the more is now fundamental to what we do. Next slide, please. So really briefly, just a bit of background to understand where we are today. It's probably helpful to understand where we came from. So we actually started out in 1992 as a really small community-run food cupboard. first 15 years, that was very much what we were. It was helping small numbers of people with one-off supplies in genuine short-term crisis. From sort of 2008 and the financial crash onwards, we started to see quite significant increases in the number of people needing our support, but also that type of support shifting from one-off to people needing ongoing support or cyclical support where they came monthly or would be back multiple times over the course of the year. Again, that accelerated from 2010 and the start of the austerity years, and put us on a path of quite sustained growth, which was obviously not where we wanted to be as a food bank. So our board recognised that the type of people that we were supporting was changing, the issues that they were facing, and that we needed to adapt to meet that changing need. So 10 years ago, we took the first step on our journey to recognising that food provision was a short-term sticking plaster solution, and that actually what we needed to do was help people address the underlying causes of why they were visiting us, and help them build their financial resilience. We started out with one, we call our team, in-house team, advice, guidance and support workers. So we started out with one person in 2016, and it very quickly became apparent that this was absolutely fundamental to the service we're providing, and we really needed to increase our capacity. So fast forward to where we are today. Next slide, please. We do still run a food bank, and we support around 5,000 people a year across 3,000 households. Some of those people come into us multiple times, as I say. Around 55% of the households we support come to us more than once in a 12-month period. Just to add that alongside the traditional food provision, we do also have a cash first element, which I'll come back to later, but we give people retail vouchers alongside their food. So we're sort of on that stepping stone towards a cash first provision as well. But in terms of our wraparound support, every single person who visits our food bank is now offered additional support to address the underlying issues that brought them to our doors in the first place. So that starts with a triage when someone's with us. We have a team of 12 staff and 20 volunteers who work in our advice, guidance and support team. And everyone who comes to us is triaged and offered further support on every visit. It's not just the first time they come. For people who come to collect their food pack from our centre, that's done face-to-face in our waiting room. Around half the food packs we give out are done on a home delivery system. So we put in follow-up phone calls to those people to reach out and sort of try and see where they are and what additional support we can provide. It's worth saying that we get much better engagement rates with the people we're able to support face-to-face. I think the sort of telephone reach outs, there are additional barriers there. And often what we end up doing with people who are receiving home deliveries is paying transport costs for them to come in and see us in the centre so that we can do that more in-depth face-to-face work with them. Our food isn't conditional on people engaging, so we very much offer support, but we don't force people to engage. We recognise that they need to engage with us when they're ready, and that may be weeks or months down the line. The what of our support is really, really generalist. We're not specialists in any one area. So you can see on the screen a few of the different services that we provide in-house, but it's a really long and varied list. So it could be anything from helping people access the Healthy Start scheme, to speaking to their housing officer with them, helping them register with a GP, advising on energy efficiency in the home. It's often quite tangential. We sort of deal with the problems someone asks us to deal with. So that's not always getting to the root causes of their crisis or resilience issues. It's helping with them, the things that are causing them stress and issues in that moment, to help remove some of the barriers to them moving forwards. And we find that a really good way to build trust and relationships with people. So our general motto is, if we can do it, we will. And if we can't, we will try really hard to find one of our partner agencies who can help with something. We've worked really hard on building relationships with partners. We've got 100 people, agencies who refer into our service that we refer back out to as well. And a lot of what we do is pathfinding and handholding. So we understand that navigating the system is really difficult for people at the best of times. When they're in financial crisis or difficulty and dealing with additional mental and emotional strain that puts on them, it can feel impossible. We know the system, we know what support's available and how to access it. And someone said to us in the last week, actually, I wish I came to you first, everything else would have been so much easier. And that's a huge part of what we do. It's helping people access as much support as possible, as seamlessly as possible. Next slide, please. So I would say the how of what we do is much more important to us than the what. Without being dismissive of the types of support we provide, there's an argument that anyone can sort of provide generalist, non-specialist advice and support with a little bit of training. What we're really good at is providing person-centred, trauma-informed support. We don't have a one-size-fits-all solution. We respond to each individual. We meet them on their terms, where they are, and we are very much led by each individual and the support that they need. We really understand that their journeys aren't going to be linear. Situations are complex and developing. We can help someone with something, accessing a tenancy, and they can be back with us a month later because they didn't feel able to maintain that tenancy, and we will pick up that support and go again. So it's really led by each individual's needs. And again, a lot of the people that we work with tell us in feedback, we're the first place they feel heard. We're the first place someone asks them what was actually wrong and what they wanted help with, rather than trying to tick a box in helping them. And that's really important to us. And it's really important in building a relationship of trust where people feel able to disclose what's actually going on for them. So a lot of the people we support come to us present with an initial, a budgeting issue, and then so far into their support, they disclose that actually they're in gambling addiction or mental health crisis, and they didn't feel comfortable sharing that initially, but now feel able to. We have boundaries. We have really strict boundaries about abusive language, threatening behaviour. We want everyone to feel safe on our site, but we communicate them kindly and with understanding, and that genuinely works. So we have a lot of people we work with who are barred from practically every other service in our town, but they will come and work with us because we give them space to be themselves, but structured and with boundaries.
Ellie,
in terms of
one more minute. Sorry. That's okay.
No problem. In terms of how we've achieved this, it's really person-led. Recruiting the right staff, volunteers, trustees. You can teach skills, but you can't teach values. We have lived experience at board, staff and volunteer level. And we give a lot of skills-based training in things like digital inclusion, understanding the benefit system, fueling better advice and community. But we also do a lot of support around person-centred, trauma-informed, de-escalation, mental health, first aid, to give people the tools to embed this way of working. Next slide, please, and I will whistle stop through. So we've been on quite the journey over 35 years. It's all been about communication with our key stakeholders, and we've communicated with them in different ways, but we've told them what we're wanting to do and why we're wanting to do it. We surveyed our financial donors, our people who access our services, referral partners. We held meetings. We talked through our approach. We listened to people's feedback, and we responded, and we did change some things based on feedback, but we knew we were going in the right direction. So that consultation process was about communicating and understanding and helping to bring people on that journey with us. And we did get some feedback through that process where people thought it was the wrong direction for us to go in. And we were able to communicate with them over time and show them the outcomes and show them why it was working and sort of bring them on that journey with us. So that was very whistle stop tour, but that's probably my time.
Thank you so much, Ellie. Really amazing what you've achieved, and thanks for sharing that. I'm now going to hand over to David Rosell from the Collective Share House, who's going to talk a bit about their journey.
Thank you, Isabel, and good morning, everyone. I hope you're all good and survived the hot weather of the recent time. It feels really difficult to follow Ellie. That was amazing what Ellie just talked about there. Feels like Ellie's the kind of mature adult in the room and we're the stroppy teenager, right? So we've been going since we're from the Collective Share House in York. And we started up in December of 2020. You'll remember the time when Marcus Rashford, who's back in the news, was working on child poverty and trying to persuade the government to continue food free school meals during the October half term of that year during COVID, and that failed. And it was really interesting that I was working with a local primary school at the time, and I contacted them and said, what are you going to do? I was chair of governors actually, and they said they weren't going to be able to do their food support anymore. And I said to the head, I'm going to have to pull rank here because I'm the chair of governors, and I order you to get the food vouchers in, and we carried on doing it even though it cost a lot. At the same meeting, the head said to me, "Oh, I've got lots of people who've been talking about food poverty." So we got on a Zoom call on a Friday night in October of 2020. There were 10 of us, and within 4 weeks we had a food bank going. We hadn't the faintest clue what we were doing. We just knew that there was a need out there. And as it proved, very quickly, we managed to get some supplies in and began our food bank work. And we now have 40 fantastic volunteers. We've given out food on 20,000 occasions over the last 5 years, or more correctly, we've allowed people to choose, because we set up our food bank in a different way to many of the providers that are out there. We don't take referrals. We don't have any judgment. People turn up, and we set up on the basis that the most important thing for some of our folk was dignity, and they choose the items that they take each week, and they choose also to donate to us at the same time, and that keeps us sustainable. But we don't give out food parcels. People choose what they want to take. And we started very small. It very quickly became evident that, this wasn't a sustainable thing to do. You can't spend, years with your finger in the dike. You need to start doing other things. People started to ask us about other forms of support and help that they needed. And I think the other thing that we try to do, as well as meet those needs, was to not only start to build wraparound support in terms of health and careers and family information service and all those kind of things, but also we formed links with local theatres and museums and book clubs and sports clubs, and I'll kind of finish off with why that's a really important thing to us later on. So from a food bank, I think within probably about 3 or 4 months, we'd begun to look at those other kinds of services. And the turning points were, one, we moved into a new location and we were able to provide a cafe. We got in touch with the wonderful Sabine, and that helped us to then link with other folk who were trying to do the same kind of work. And we started working on the Money Guiders program. And what that brought home to us, each of those three things brought home to us was one, that simple food support wasn't enough. Two, that we really needed to start talking and listening to our neighbours in a really genuine way, and and three, that we had to do what Ellie talked so eloquently about a few minutes ago, was to build that trust and build those relationships with our neighbours, so that we began to do the things that they needed rather than make the guesses that we made from the start. And we're nearly at the end of this year, we'll be 6 years into the project. Some fantastic things have happened. I'm not a big fan of data, to be honest. I'm a big fan of stories, so I'll give you a little bit of data, but also some stories. We worked with the Lift project with our local council in York. We have a fantastic benefits advisor who comes every week, which is really helpful. And the data from that is that over the last 6 months, 20 of our neighbours are now between them £25,000 per annum better off. So that's a real big win for us. Because of that work and because of the other networks that we have, because we work with 18, I think, different organisations right now, we've seen since the last autumn, 20% decline in numbers attending, which is obviously great news. So that's really good. The other thing is the stories, and I need to be careful here because Isabel told us not to use bad language, so I'll have to gloss over that a bit. But here's a story that maybe helps to understand how far we've now come from being just a food bank. We have a guy who comes to us. I'm going to call him Gary. It's not his real name. But Gary comes to us, and we were sat having a chat in the cafe one day, and he said, I says, why do you keep coming, Gary? Why do you keep coming to see us? And he said, I like the banter and the chat and whatever, but he said, mostly I effing hate being retired. And I go, okay, well, as it happens, Gary, in about 4 weeks' time, we have a jobs fair, which we set up in a partnership which we have with York Racecourse, and their folk came in to talk about possible opportunities with them for getting back into employment. So Gary comes along to our jobs fair, and he talks immediately to someone who's in the grounds maintenance at the racecourse, which was his job before he retired. And that conversation went really well. He went then across into our cafe. In our cafe, we had someone on our digital inclusion program who helped him to fill in the application forms online. And hey presto, Gary is no longer effing retired. So, those kinds of stories are, really, really important to us. But the key issue, I think, is that, from the start, we were always about more than the food. We were always about trying to help people with social participation as well. And the cafe and the money guidance program really got us into all of that. And, the plan is to now, I guess, run a support where our strapline becomes that people come for the food but stay for everything else. And we have a number of people now who only come to our location to see Emily as a benefits advisor. We had someone who came along to us last Friday who said, I don't want to come for food, but I've heard the cafe's great and we can have a lot of chat and some nice cakes. And that's absolutely as it should be. We also have people who, and this is a true story, I won't give this person's name, but we have a woman who said to us, David, I don't really think I need to come to collect food, but if I come to collect food, I can also afford dancing lessons for my daughters. And we're absolutely up for that. big time, and so that person continues to come and use our service. And I think the CRF will really help us with this. We want to build our network of 18 different organizations that we're working with. We hope that with 3 years worth of money, that we'll be able to work with our local authority to make sure that those services continue, and most importantly, they continue face to face. I think Ellie alluded to this earlier on. No one wants to be given a phone number or an email address. They want to see someone. They want to see someone and talk to them face to face about what the issues are. They want to feel that it's safe to do so and that those people are trusted. So there's loads of stuff still to do, but
Just 1 minute, David.
yeah, and that's great as well, because this is my final point. As well as all of that great stuff that we want to do, we don't want to lose sight of what I said earlier about links with theatres and museums and book clubs and sports clubs and all of that stuff. And we're very mindful that, and we use a quote from Rose Schneiderman, who was an early 20th century author and activist in the USA. And I'll just quote what she said, because I think it's a really important part of what we do. And she said this: "What the woman who labours wants is the right to live, not simply exist. The right to life, as the rich woman has the right to life, and the sun, the music, and the art. You have nothing that the humblest worker has not a right to have also. The worker must have bread, but she must have roses too." Thank you.
Beautiful. Lovely. Thank you so much, David. Really great to hear all about that, and a very moving quote at the end. Can we now please bring in Laurel Nathan, who is from St Richard's Community Cafe?
Yeah, hi everybody. I am Laurel from St Richard's, which is in Brighton. So we're based in an estate in Brighton, and there's so much that I could say, but we've got very limited time. So there is an article on the Sustain website, which was done about our organisation as well. But I just wanted to tell you a little bit about our journey, how we actually became the first Trussell Trust food bank in the country to close through no longer being needed on our estate. So basically, I've got 25 years background in working with complex and vulnerable adults, working with food poverty, in amongst many other things, addiction and recovery, mental health, physical health, and benefits budgeting, all of that stuff. I was also trained as a debt coach, and I worked with a well-known free debt management organisation in the UK, and I've worked in Manchester in the States and now here in Brighton. So when I was working as a debt coach, I was going around lots of different food banks, and I was seeing quite a similar pattern after COVID, was that a lot of people were using food banks on a weekly basis. And many of them had become stuck in a pattern of using and relying on food banks, but not necessarily anything was being done more than that. And so I just did kind of a very informal survey with the different managers of the different food banks, not all Trussell, to see how many users did they think were using food banks who perhaps didn't need to. And the numbers were quite staggeringly high that they fed back. They all estimated about between 75 and 80% of people may be stuck in a pattern of using as opposed to needing to use it. So what I did was, when the job came up for food bank manager here, I said, if you are interested in change, I have a strategy that I would like to try to take all the different parts of my background and what I've been learning, and to see if that would work to help reduce the need for food bank on our estate. And we are in the top levels of deprivation on the National Index of Multiple Deprivations in the country. So they gave the green light and the go ahead for that. And so what we did, we made provisions and we closed for a month, and that was quite a difficult decision, but we kept everybody informed. But what that did was really give us time to be able to re-strategize, But not only that, but it gave me time to contact every single person on our list. So we were giving about up to 80 parcels a week out at that point in time to different households. And so I contacted every single person personally to either offer to meet up with them or to have a phone chat and let them know and find out a bit more about them, find out a bit more about their situation and what they're using food bank for. And then we already started to put together individualized plans with people at that stage, so that when we came back to opening the food bank again, people already knew that we were going to be asking about, we were going to do budgets with people, we were going to be asking about support, but we really cared about them as individuals. They weren't just a food bank user, but they were an individual needing to use a food bank. And so I thought by making those phone calls, I was about to become one of the most hated people in Hollingdean. That's what I told my new bosses. And what it turns out was it couldn't have been more opposite. People were so thankful for the phone call, so thankful for the personal contact, so thankful for the offer of help, that it ended up being completely different from what I'd anticipated. So then when we reopened, what we saw was everybody coming through continued to get a phone call. So that was also to make food bank less of a place where you were nervous about going, and maybe those who really needed it weren't accessing it because it's a really strange place to go, and walking through the doors for the first time is really difficult. So sometimes just having that phone call and being like, we've got your referral, tell us a little bit about yourself, and this is what to expect when you come. I'm going to be there. I look forward to meeting you in person on Wednesday or whatever. And so our numbers of people who didn't engage after a referral went right down to basically non-existent. And then over time, what we saw was the number of people needing emergency food was going down, and the number of people accessing all kinds of support was going up. To the point where, again, this is a very whistle stop, but to the point where we eventually got to the point where we were only 10 people a week needing emergency food, but the numbers of people needing support was very high. And we would meet one-to-one with those, as well as triaging them at the cafe. And then it got down to the point where we were regularly getting about 5 people every week needing a food parcel. That might be different people or some who are using it for a while. So we don't have any limit on how long people need it for. If you might need it for 1 week to help you out of crisis, that's great. If you need it for a year because we're ongoing working with you to get you out of crisis to make sure you're in the right financial place, then we will do that. So there's no kind of strict rule with that. It's definitely a one-to-one needs-based approach. And so when we got to the point where we were like 4 or 5 people regularly a week, sustained over a long period of time, we decided that the time to run a food bank and the money to run a food bank was being taken away from what support we could offer. So we decided, in conjunction with Trussell, to close our food bank and just become fully a community support cafe, which still gives out emergency food because there'll always be a small number of people that need emergency food. But we do that by giving out supermarket vouchers now rather than running a food bank. And the thing that we noticed with that was giving a food bank a supermarket voucher to people. We also give a example shopping list of breakfast, lunches, dinners and snacks for a week that you can buy within that voucher total. But we also know that a lot of people on our estate have never been off the estate to go supermarket shopping. They go to the Premier and tap away all week, and that is where money goes, and on takeaways and local shops. And so we then also offer a volunteer to meet them at the supermarket to do a week shop with them once or twice until they feel confident and comfortable. And then we've upskilled them for being able to budget and shop when their finances are in a better place. So we offer.
No, just one more minute.
Yeah, brilliant. Time flies. So there's so much I can say, but what I will do is that I will put my email address in the chat as well, because if anybody's got any questions specific to closing down a food bank or more details about that approach, I'd love to answer those questions. Just to say that now it's worked so successfully in this community that my job has gone part-time because I'm no longer needed full-time, so I went down to 3 days a week. But with those 2 days a week, I'm now working at another food bank, managing that in the city, which was failing because they were nearly out of money, and the staff had to be let go. So that they were also giving away about 65 parcels a week. And already that same model that we've used, which has not been given in very much detail, has been used there to see, with some tweaks, can we change that and adapt it for that particular estate and neighbourhood. And that's a much bigger estate, a much different estate. And so far we have already moved down to about 10 to 12 emergency food parcels a week, while seeing the number of people accessing support be really high. So we know now we've got a model that can be used elsewhere, and so that's where we're at.
Thank you so much, Laurel. Really interesting. I think a few people have already said they'd love to be in contact. So if you're happy to share your email, I'm sure you'll be getting a few emails coming through from other places that are really interested in what you've done. Well, huge thanks for that vast amount of experience that's been shared there. We have had some questions coming through in the chat and in the Q&A. So I'm now going to ask all the speakers, if you're happy to, I'll read out some of the questions, and if you'd like to come in, that would be brilliant. We might not be able to get through all of them, but we will do our best in the time we've got left. So I saw one come through in the chat from Jill, who said that we already deliver what the CRF describes as the model for the future, but our issue isn't the approach, it's the timeline. We move at the speed of trust, not the speed of a tick box. And the system that's supposed to help our residents is frequently the thing that slows them down, but funders want outputs and exit points. We deliver both, but trust takes as long as it takes. So for anyone who wants to come in on this, how do other organisations evidence relationship-based, non-linear journeys to funders who expect a straight line from crisis to resolution? Quite a big question there, but does anyone have anything they could share around that? Ellie, please do come in.
Two different things. One is easier said than done, but we worked really hard to diversify our funders. So a lot of our funding is unrestricted funding from individuals and business in our community who just support what we do, and they don't care about outputs and outcomes. They believe in what we're doing as a charity. It takes time to move to that model, but that does free us up a lot. The other thing I would say is we're quite bold with our grant funders in telling them, because of the types of people we're supporting and the situations, it won't be linear. We can share stats, we can share case studies and people's journeys, and sort of feedback directly from people we've supported. But we've always been very upfront with our grant funders about the difficulty of presenting those linear journeys, and sort of had success with funders like Garfield Weston or the Lottery, who take a more holistic approach to funding. And again, they're sort of buying into what you're doing, and then they're less pressurized around the outcomes they ask you to report, maybe.
That's really helpful, Ellie. And I think, yeah, the thing about sort of telling stories that you were talking about, David, can be really powerful there, but that's a really thoughtful answer. We've got a question actually directly for you, Ellie, which said, kind of leads on from that. How do your charitable funders approach the target outputs? The more wraparound support we offer, our numbers go down, and some charitable funders might not see that as a success.
So we have lottery funding at the minute for some of our advice workers, and our bid to the lottery was that we wanted our numbers to go down. So we were up from in that we were bringing these workers in to help us reduce the number of people needing the food bank. So I think that's sort of how we've approached that. We've said that's what we're trying to do, but also being very open about the difficulty in measuring. We have people who came to us weekly who now only come to us fortnightly, but that's progress towards achieving that aim. So we've just sort of been really upfront about the difficulty in recording some of these things, and we'll share stats and stories as much as we can. But ultimately, what we're trying to do is reduce the food bank numbers. That's what success looks like.
Great, really helpful. We've had a question come in from Trin, maybe a tiny bit controversial, which is asking if for speakers, if you're already engaging with your local authorities around the CRF, and are you happy with how the conversations are going, or does it feel like local authorities are dominating with what they think's best rather than kind of working with you? Don't know if any of you have got any insights around that.
I'm happy to share again. We're really fortunate. We have a local welfare provision team in Kirklees, which I believe a lot of local authorities don't have anymore. But we've got a really well established relationship with them over the years. So they've spoken to us every sort of step of the way to share what they could with us and understand the direction we thought we might be able to go in and what the timescales look like. So we've had a really positive relationship where it's felt like a genuine two-way thing with our local authority.
Don't know if any of the other speakers want to talk about sort of how they've developed that relationship with the local authority, or how that's been for you. Yeah, David.
Yeah, just to re-emphasize, I think what Ellie said in her answers, which I think have been fantastic, which is that I think out there people need to understand what has been said on this webinar today, which is that, you know, the kind of typical model of a food bank is kind of already gone. And that people need to understand that what most folk are doing out in the field now is way more than just handing out food, and that the whole wraparound support thing is the way that I think everyone's. I don't know any food banks now that I have contact with who was simply just handing out food. Most people are in the business of wraparound support, and most people have, you know, great stories about what they're doing and how people are, you know, coming back into the mainstream because of the work that we're doing. And I think the more of that kind of thing that happens, the more, Ellie's right, the more that you build that relationship with those authorities and get them to come and look at and experience what it is that you're doing, then the better.
Great, David. I wondered if, Sabine, did you want to say anything there around the CRF Alliance and the kind of support that is coming to local authorities and others, hopefully, around sort of making CRF a success and, you know, working with the BCS and things like that?
Sure. Now, what we're hoping with the CRF Alliance is that we can facilitate the sharing of best practice across local authorities, so that where local authorities may not be quite so confident and where the VCS hasn't necessarily developed some of these ideas just yet, they would be able to learn from other areas. But it's a new piece of work, and it's just developing, and we're trying to, as I said earlier, work out ways that we can evaluate collaboratively so that we can make the best of gathering the evidence, so we can build the case for a permanent system come 2029, because 3 years feels like a long time now, but it's going to fly by, as we all know. So it's a work in progress, and we'll keep you updated, that's for sure.
Brilliant, thanks, Sabine. I think we've just got time for one more question, and I've got a question from Alex that says, will existing advice services receive increased funding through the CRS, as currently advice services are stretched? So food providers are reluctant to signpost to them because of them being stretched, and there's a lack of funding for mobile advice workers and food provision. Did you want to come into that, Sabine?
Yeah, Alex, that's a really good question. But yes, that is definitely a possibility for advice services to be funded. And I think it's really important that the food aid providers on the ground who are experiencing that kind of delay really find a way to feed back that concern to local authorities so they're aware, so that there's clear information about the urgency and need for that for the investment in the existing local advice services.
Yeah, brilliant. I think that the guidance definitely sets out that should be a priority, but different places might be taking different, routes. So I agree that's really important, Sabine, to feed that back. Well, we are at 12 o'clock, so I'm sorry we couldn't quite get through all the questions. I think we've got through most of them, but a really huge thank you to our brilliant speakers who were very generous in sharing all of their experience and knowledge there. This was recorded and we will share that along with any sort of resources and links that have come up. And that there'll be a follow-up email coming to everyone that's registered. So I think there's all that's left for me to say is a huge thank you to all of you for coming along, and a huge thank you to our speakers for being so generous with their time and expertise. Thanks very much, everyone.